People on the internet are one of the most powerful people in the world. Screw becoming the president, just become a Reddit monitor for a popular server. You see, it takes a small group of people or one big well-known person to find something that's small that has potential and sort of expand it throughout the internet. Whether it's making a video about said thing or expanding it in a different form such as a video game, meme, along with some other form of entertainment. And it's a pretty fun thing to witness. Seeing the evolution of something so small become something so big. Pause. Now, the internet is a big place. It's a whole new world filled with anything you want. And in some cases, you might come across something that intrigues you in some sort of way. Whether it's a video game or some small form of entertainment that does not really get talked about as much or is still relatively new to the world. Now, you could either just take this form of entertainment all in and let that be that, or you could expand it with a post and share with your friends. Next thing you know, this form of entertainment that you saw only had a few people talking about it is now the next big thing. Now, the scenario that I just embedded in your head is most commonly happening to themes of horror. Not always, but from what I have witnessed, it's usually some sort of horror or scares that make a pretty big mark on the internet. And most of these times, these horror creations would have a very creepypasta-like vibe with a very iconic character or place at the center of it. The past 10 to 12 years have been a buttload of different forms of creepypasta horror vibe characters, along with places and stories that's made its mark on the internet that will never really be forgotten. Some of these iconic characters and places have become really big and expanded in many different forms like video games, short stories, and even movies, and some just became a one-off thing, solely making its mark but not being as big or rather memorable as the other thing before it. And yeah, it's kind of what I want to talk about in this particular video. I'm planning on taking you guys down a trip through memory lane and taking you guys all the way back to when the internet was at a point where all people could talk about were these internet horror creations. So sit back, relax, and let's get right into the video. Also, a bit of a heads up, I know I mentioned creepypasta a lot. Now, some of these creations are not coming directly from creepypasta. It's just the feel and vibe that these characters and places give when you hear and look at them. I'm going to be giving the sources of the characters and places I'm going to be mentioning in this video. I just thought I should let you guys know, seeing how I don't want to have some wannabe YouTube detective in my comments being like, oh, that's not creepypasta, that comes from here. So yeah, let's really begin now. Now, to really get a better understanding of where this all started, I guess I have to take you guys all the way back to the very beginning. Now, all the way back to 2010. Now, I was never really big with the whole horror genre back then. As a matter of fact, I hated horror, nor was I interested in anything that has horror. Because one, I got scared really easy back then, and two, if this horror thing, whether it's a video game, movie, or even a book, was so well done to the point where it had a very realistic vibe, then my idiot ass would just think that it was based on a true story, and I would then have to sleep with a nightlight on all night. So yeah, I think it's safe to say that I was not interested in anything that had horror. That is until he, or rather it, came along. Slender Man. This creature is probably the godfather of internet horror for anyone that grew up in the 2000s era. Now, the first time I ever got introduced to Slender Man was through my cousin when he showed me a video game on his computer. But really, the first time Slender Man was ever introduced to the world was in a 2009 comedy web form when a guy by the name of Eric Cutson submitted a piece for him called Something Awful with this particular image. A very creepy black and white photo with kids in the front and an ominous slender white figure in the background just standing there. Now, apparently this is completely new news to me actually. This was supposed to be a meme, just a one-off thing. But little did Eric know that this image he created would become something really big. The next thing you know, there would be other forms of images similar to Eric's Slenderman work, but this time more detailed. Eventually the whole image and meme gig slowed down and there was actually a game dedicated to Slenderman. It was at this point that Slenderman was actually getting his own backstory / story, and it rolled around something like this. You are stuck in the forest. In order to leave, you need to find 7 pages, and within these pages were a strange note written on them. But while you're trying to find these pages, this strange light slender creature with no face is hunting you down, and the closer you get to it, the closer your view will be fogged up with static until all you see is his face. Yeah, but pretty creepy. Now, this game got a lot of traction and eventually became the face and source of Slender Man, and it's because of this game that many people even know who Slender Man is. Dozens of YouTubers actually played this game, like Smosh Games and PewDiePie. And now that we're talking about YouTubers, YouTube was becoming more and more popular around 2010 and 2012. And it was because around this time when Slender Man was becoming bigger and bigger that YouTube was a good platform for stuff like Slender Man to get around. There was eventually this inspired game based around the Slender Man game like Slender Tubbies. And you know when an internet thing becomes big boomer news outlets like to talk about it. Yeah, I think it's safe to say that Slender Man was a very iconic horror character on the internet, and that was pretty amazing. I mean, nothing could go wrong, right? Now, Slender Man was becoming so big that kids actually thought that Slender Man was based on a true story. I mean, I even believed that Slender Man was real at one point because I was a kid, and kids are, well, idiots. But hey, just because a few kids believe that something is scary was real doesn't mean anything bad would happen, right?
It was a nightmare crime. Two 12-year-old girls stabbed their friend 19 times. The motive, a sacrifice to a macabre fictional monster known as Slender Man.
This happened. So apparently 2 kids thought Slender Man was real and decided to sort of sacrifice their friend to Slender Man by stabbing her in the forest. It was pretty bad, not gonna lie. There was even a whole documentary about it, about the incident way back if you guys want to check that out. It's really depressing. The girl who got stabbed survived, and the 2 friends are serving life in prison last time I checked. So yeah, the crazy part is there's nothing revolving around Slender Man and rituals. Like, the 2 kids just made that shit up. In all my life knowing about Slender Man, it has always been about him being in the forest, hunting you down while you're trying to find 7 pages. Now, there's the occasional version of Slender Man where he takes kids, mainly a little white girl, but that's about it. Nothing about trying to kill your friend for the sake of Slender Man's approval, but, you know, who knows. I might have missed out in the Slender Man fanfics. Eventually, there was this fully polished AAA title game called Slender Man Arrival that basically followed the same premise, but I guess the devs want to sort of expand Slender Man into this sort of story game. Then about 8 years later, out comes a Slender Man movie, which I think at this point, Slender Man had sort of died off and people just stopped asking for a Slender Man movie. I mean, don't get me wrong, people were begging for one, but like 3, 4, maybe 5 years after Slender Man became a thing. And this movie was just complete garbage. I mean, the movie had no connection or correlation to any version or story that was connected to Slender Man back then. The movie was just your typical horror film where a bunch of girls decide to summon some sort of demon, or in this case, Slender Man. But yeah, the movie, which had came out in 2018, was kind of the last thing big that was connected to Slender Man, and I would say that that was pretty much the end of the one, the only, Slender Man. Now, because of Slender Man, there was this increase in creepypasta-like horror creations. There have been many different attempts to sort of create a horror theme that is iconic and was as big as Slender Man. Now, over the years, there have been a few iconic creepypasta-like characters, but nothing came close to the popularity as that Slender Man had. There was Sonic EXE, Jeff the Killer, and a few others, but nothing really came close for a bunch of reasons. For Sonic EXE's case, there really wasn't much going on in the story part or even the gameplay. Now, Sonic EXE was actually created in 2011, and it was created by a guy named JC the Hyena. Now, Sonic EXE was actually a creepypasta creation that started out as a short story. Eventually, that short story got enough attention to the point where there was actual fan art of Sonic EXE plastered around everywhere on the internet. And it did not take long for some game dev to actually implement Sonic EXE as some sort of Sonic fan game. Essentially, in the game, you would play as Sonic's friends and go around some of the OG Sonic levels until Sonic EXE appears and kills you. The premise of Sonic EXE did not really go further than that. And I think it's due to the fact that the idea of this form/character revolves around another character, Sonic. It did not take long for Sonic EXE to just become another Sonic fan-made thing, and just made by a person that likes Sonic. And that's kind of the problem with these creepypasta type characters. If you create a character or story that revolves around another character or story, then the idea can only go so far, unlike if it came from a more original sense of view. Now, don't get me wrong, there are dozens of creepypasta ideas or creation that revolve around a video game character, and honestly, I can't blame them. Back when 3D games were starting to become a thing, there were dozens of models of characters or enemies that had a very creepypasta-like vibe. And it was through these websites on the internet that expanded it to a much more further length, giving it a story with these creepy game models rather than letting it be what it was, just a chilling choice of a game model design. I feel like the next creepypasta character that I should talk about is Jeff the Killer, just so I can get it out of the way. This is one of the stupidest characters I have ever heard. It did not go anywhere, although I'm pretty sure a majority of people have at least heard of the name before, but doesn't really know anything about the character, which is honestly fine. I don't think I knew a single person that actually knew stuff about Jeff the Killer other than the fact that he's a killer. This image is the most popular and probably the source material for Jeff the Killer, but from what I now know of Jeff the Killer is that Jeff was a kind person that loved his family until he got into an accident that made him look deformed. He then went insane and became a dangerous murderer, and apparently he has a catchphrase: "Go to sleep." Nice. I see now why many people did not talk about Jeff and why the story did not really go anywhere. It's because this shit's boring. Like, the idea of a killer being born after an accident is really nothing new. Like, 70% of any story that involves a killer just starts off with a killer being deformed or being in an accident that made him different. I think it's safe to say that Jeff the Killer is not going anywhere anytime soon. But yeah, so far there have been some pretty crazy stories and ideas that people have created that have been really well known throughout the internet. Now, we all love challenges, but challenges that really hit are the ones that scare us the most. As a kid, I'm sure we've all done the Bloody Mary challenge, or have at least talked about using a Ouija board once. Now, none of these challenges really made any big impact, but I feel like the challenge or other creation I'm going to be talking about next definitely made a pretty big impact onto the world in today's world. You know him, you love him, it's Momo. To this day, I have no idea where Momo really came from. As far as I know, most people on the internet don't know either. This image kind of just popped up out of nowhere and just became the talk of the town around my middle school. Now, the first time I ever heard about Momo was through this reaction type video. You know, the ones that do a stupid challenge and react to a bunch of stuff and give the most overdramatic reaction. Yeah, after that I just kept hearing about Momo, to the point where even boomer TV outlets wanted to have a piece on the action.
A child safety alert for all parents to know about tonight. Law enforcement officials across the country, they put out warnings about the Momo challenge.
Now, there were two aspects on the whole Momo situation that I knew, along with what was the most commonly known thing on the internet about Momo. One was where Momo would show up in kids shows like Peppa Pig. I mean, can we be more original now, please, people? Come on, kid shows. Now, at some point, most likely around 3 a.m., if you were watching Peppa Pig around that time, there would be an image of Momo that would appear, and this would happen.
Morning.
Ah, what a nice day for doing nothing.
Daddy Pig loves doing nothing.
Then there was this other version where you could actually contact Momo throughout the WhatsApp on your phone. That's right, demons, entities, and unknown creatures no longer need to use summoning with a ritual to appear. They just switch to a cellular usage, and they've become one with the modern time. Now, there's a specific number that you have to type in the WhatsApp, which the name Momo would appear. You would then text the number, and you would have contact with this creature. Now, 10 times out of 10, nothing's gonna happen. No one's gonna answer unless it's just some ass just trolling around after he saw the whole Momo challenge thing and he just did this. Or some guy trying to get views on YouTube just asked his friend to play the role as Momo in this whole charade of a video. and you'd be surprised of how many people did this. As if trying to kick context to Momo at 3 AM would make any difference in how well the video would do. Guys, today we're trying to get text Momo at 7:30 since mom said my bedtime is at 8. Like, how much you want to bet that some people didn't even do the 3 AM challenge? Like, it's not even 3 AM. They just changed the timing on their phone. Momo ended up becoming a big thing around 2018. As a matter of fact, I was doing a bit of research on Momo for this video, and there's been a whole Wikipedia page dedicated to the Momo challenge. It even explains the parts of the world that the Momo challenge actually affected. Now, this whole thing was a hoax, but what's news to me is that the Momo challenge actually fucked up the world around 2018 to 2019. There were police involved and whatever reason, and apparently in Argentina there had been reports between the relationship of the Momo challenge and the suicide of a 12-year-old girl. Like, what?
New concerns tonight that a disturbing video challenge could be targeting kids. It's even causing police to sound the alarm.
Now, none of this has actually been confirmed by the property authorities, but still, just thinking that this challenge had something to do with this girl's death is still really messed up. I mean, I knew it was a hoax, my friend knew it was a hoax, my teacher knew it was a hoax, other adults and parents knew it was fake, but these little kids, man, they're gullible. They're the gullible few. In some sense, the Momo challenge had a somewhat similar effect that Slenderman did way back then, except the fact that it had a much more heavier toll. I mean, 2 kids having to try to kill their friend for the sake of a fictional character is pretty bad, but damn it, it was 2012 back then. We care about our kids now. But yeah, that Momo made a pretty big impression to the world, and it was not good whatsoever. There were a few fan games that got the attention of a few popular YouTubers, but that was pretty much it. Then Corey Kenshin decided to name his plant Momo, and I guess that's where Momo legacy actually ends. Now, I'm actually surprised that it didn't take long for another horror icon to pop up on the internet, but then again, this horror creation got popular around 2020, which, as we all know, was the worst year in all of human history due to the pandemic. And because of this, many people just stayed home. Now, there's actually 2 creations that I want to talk about for this section of the video. One creation is more popular than the other, but you know, they were both made by the same person, and they were both made around the same year. Now, the first one I'm actually want to talk about is Siren Head. I don't think this is a horror creation that needs a proper introduction, seeing how as we all know who this character really is. But here's some backstory information for the people who don't know. Now, the creation of Siren Head was made by this guy right here, Trevor Henderson, a Canadian artist. Now, Trevor was the type of artist that would make some pretty creepy shit. Not like some crazy goth teen art that would make you second guess a person, but the art that sort of had this blend between reality and fiction. It's kind of hard to explain. Here are some of his pieces, but to really summarize, his art was good. It was really good. Now, the year was 2018 when he created this piece, and it was a pretty creepy, lanky picture of a creature with a siren's for mouth that had a pretty dark burnt skin tone. Now, at the time, it didn't really get much attention compared to when it got a lot of attention in 2020. And Jesus, when I tell you this Siren Head creation got attention, I mean it really got attention. Now, for me, and I think most other people that got introduced to Siren Head, had to be because of this YouTuber, Markiplier. He had made a video playing this game called Siren Head the Game, and I think that's how Siren Head really blew up. Eventually, other YouTubers played this game, and this character started getting his own community. It did not take long for these VFX content creators to make videos based around Siren Head. Like, you have no idea how many times I've seen TikToks of these videos of Siren Head just walking around the cities. Eventually, Siren Head had become so big, and I don't mean that in a literal sense, seeing how he's 40 feet tall, people just started making short stories around this character, giving Siren Head his own lore. And I mean, there was this whole YouTube channel dedicated to making animation story that revolved around big iconic creepypasta like stories or images. Now, game wise, there were dozens of small indie games based around Siren Head, and they were all published on itch.io. Now, surprisingly, no TV outlets did any reports or pieces on Siren Head, which seemed a bit strange. I mean, they can bullshit news pieces on games like Poppy Playtimes, but they can't take the time to make on this amazing monstrosities. I mean, what other news could you really be reporting in 2020? Now, the other horrific creation that Trevor made was seemingly around the same year as Siren Head, and that guy was called the Cartoon Cat. Now, the first time I saw this creature, immediately my head went to Bendy and the Ink Machine, even though the only similarities these creatures have was that they were both black. I swear I'm not racist. I'm not. I'm also black, but you know. Now, the Cartoon Cat didn't even come close to the popularity that Siren Head did. Not even close whatsoever. But there were a few videos based around this character though. The most popular ones were these VFX videos where there's this guy in the park in the middle of the night and he looks up and sees this. Or people just making fan art of the Cartoon Cat and making a slideshow with this creepy ass music. Oh yeah, and you know, CG5 also made the song based around the Cartoon Cat. It didn't really get much attention. He only got like 27 million views. Well, shit. Then you also have these really stupid videos that say nothing, like, you know, the top 10 real sightings of the Cartoon Cat, you know, those types of videos. Like, the person that made the video knows it's full of shit, the people that are watching knows it's full of shit, even YouTube knows it's full of shit, but kids, man, like I told you before with Slender Man, kids are freaking gullible. Other than that, there really wasn't much based around the Cartoon Cat, which honestly, kind of a letdown. I hate it when people's creations have potential to grow to be something more than what it is, but doesn't really get enough attention or get enough features, information for it to be more than what it was from its original source. Now, thankfully, one of Trevor's creations got attention it deserved, and it was a really big one thanks to a YouTuber and a group of followers for it to go viral. Honestly, it really puts a smile on my face when that happens. The last horror creepypasta-like vibe creation that I want to talk about is one that people are still talking about right now, still making a shit ton of new content that revolves around this creation and gets a lot of attention, whether it's on websites like YouTube or Reddit, mostly YouTube. And this creation that I'm talking about is the backrooms. This is like the most talked about things for some reason in the horror community. Now, the information on how the backrooms became a thing is actually misinformed information. Now, how the backrooms became an actual thing was because of this YouTuber by the name of Kyle, who made a VFX video called The Backrooms Lost Footage. Now, in the video, it's about this kid that got transported into this place where the walls all had the same wallpapers, and the place that he was in was this endless maze. Over the time he walks around this maze, he tries to find a way out, and sooner or later he finds out that he's not alone and that there's this strange creature that's following him and trying to hunt him down. The kid tries to find an exit to this place, but every turn he makes leads him further and further from where he was originally. He comes around and finds what seems to be an exit, but the creature attacks him, and that's the end of the video. Now, the crazy thing is, this video, it looks like it was recorded and it was actually made live action short horror, but it turns out it was all made in Blender, this 3D software for 3D animation modeling, along with some other stuff too. This video alone has over 30 million views, and essentially what started the backrooms, or at least that's what people think. See, the backrooms may have been gotten popular around 2022, but it actually was created from someone on 4chan. Now, two things: who the hell still uses 4chan? And two, the user uploaded the image of the backrooms and gave a pretty good description too on pretty much what the origin of the backrooms is. Now, what Kyle did was he ended up using this idea and expanded it into a way that was not just an image. If you check his YouTube page, he actually made 13 high-end quality videos based around the backrooms, each of them getting millions and millions of views. And I think it's safe to say that Kane actually expanded the story, or really created a story based around this one image with a brief description that is the backrooms. Next thing you know, there are dozens of YouTubers making videos based around the backrooms, whether it's them playing a video game or reacting to a video that is straight up talking about the backrooms. And as of right now, it's still trending. It's one of the most iconic horror creations of this day and age. I mean, I've seen gaming YouTubers who switched their way of content just to watch content that revolves around the backrooms, and honestly, it's a kind of a fun thing to see. There were dozens of backrooms games along with maps that showed a similarity to the backrooms in games like VRChat and even Gmod. As a matter of fact, there was this game mode called Next Spot, and the map I see that gets used the most was actually the backrooms ones. One of the reasons why I think backrooms got so popular was honestly the concept was very underwhelming, to say the very least. I mean, being trapped in these rooms like hallways where every wall is basically the same while something is trying to kill you is nothing too original. I mean, I've seen dozens of games levels using this implementation of their maze while an enemy is trying to chase you as a factor for scare. But for some reason, the backrooms does it differently. It manages to implement this maze in a more scarier demeanor way. Some areas of the backrooms can have much more darker areas and others could just have straight up dead ends. But in the end, I think it was the community that made this more scary and more bigger than it originally was intended to be. And you will not believe how many people have posted videos of them finding the backrooms. Like, it's insane. When in reality, the building's hallways just have the same wallpapers as the ones in the actual backrooms. But I think that's about it. That's pretty much all the stuff I have for this video. I know there are dozens of other creepy-like horror creations and iconic characters that I have not talked about in this video, whether they come directly from creepypasta or another source, but I mainly wanted to talk about these creepy-like creations that really had a strong reaction on the internet that essentially had communities keep pushing these creations out with more following detail. And I feel like the creations that I talked about in this video made a pretty big impact on the internet and essentially broke it in a way where at some points, most of the time when you're browsing on websites like YouTube, Reddit, or even TikTok, you would see this creation so many times. But who knows, I might make a part 2, talk about all the B-list characters and locations and creations that I have not talked about. But that won't be for a while. But yeah, I hope you guys liked the video, hope you enjoyed. And remember, skip ass, eat grass, smoke class. That made no sense, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.